Welcome. Welcome to the 2025 Educational Webinar Series. This month we are going to be talking about NHSN rebaselining. For our housekeeping, please mute your lines as you enter the webinar. If you have questions for our speaker, please drop them in the chat. Julie will be collecting all of the questions, and then we'll be asking them to Kyle at the end of his presentation. There are no continuing education units for today. However, if you miss a chunk of this webinar or you want to go back and rewatch this webinar, you can check us out on the APIC Great Lakes YouTube channel, where you can find all of our recordings. Presentation and slides and any supplemental materials can also be found on the APIC Great Lakes website. If you have a job posting, please let us know. You can send it to our APIC Great Lakes website, and then our social media person and webmaster will be putting it up on the link to the job board. And now I'd like to introduce our presenter. Kyle Muchez is an NHSN epidemiologist with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services in the Surveillance of Healthcare Associated and Resistant Pathogens, or SHARP unit. He supports hospitals statewide with subject matter expertise on NHSN reporting and data analysis for infection prevention and antimicrobial stewardship. Kyle previously worked in cancer epidemiology at MDHHS with the CDC Foundation and in local public health. He earned his Master's of Public Health in Epidemiology from Tulane University School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine, and is dedicated to helping infection preventionists translate complex data into strategies that improve patient safety. When not working, you can find Kyle enjoying the outdoors with his two. And I am going to now pass over the sharing to Kyle. Take it away.
Thank you, Denise, and thanks for that intro. Good afternoon, everyone. As Denise mentioned, my name is Kyle Muchez, and thank you for joining today's APIC Great Lakes presentation. Today, I will be walking you through what the NHSN rebaseline really means, why the CDC implemented it, how it changes the way we calculate infection ratios, and what these shifts mean for your hospitals and infection prevention programs. My goal today is to clarify exactly why that's happening, what's changed behind the scenes, and how you can confidently communicate these shifts to leadership and frontline teams. So here's today's agenda. I'm going to start with an overview of the National Healthcare Safety Network rebaselining and why it's necessary. Then we'll go into detail on what specifically changed with the 2022 models, then refresh our understanding of the standardized infection ratio, since that's the key measure being recalibrated under this rebaselining. We'll then look at how this affects hospitals in Michigan, including some real data examples. I'll also share strategies, like I mentioned, for communicating these changes to leadership and outline some practical next steps facilities can take. So just going into the NHSN baseline history. So when we say rebaselining, we're talking about updating the national reference year that the National Healthcare and Safety Network, managed by the CDC, uses to calculate both the standardized infection ratio and the standardized utilization ratio. And for short, that's the SIR or SUR. Until now, the baseline was from 2015. Beginning this year, NHSN has updated that baseline to 2022. That means when you run your analytic reports, NHSN now compares your observed infections against what would be expected nationally based on 2022 data, not 2015. The 2015 baseline reports will still be available for a while, but new reports built on the 2022 models will soon become the standard for CMS programs. CDC plans to refresh these baselines roughly every 7 years, which helps keep our national benchmarks aligned with current practices and surveillance capabilities. So just looking at some of the NHSN baseline history, this is not the first rebaseline that NHSN has gone under. Some of us on the call may have remembered the shift back in 2019. The 2015 baseline was rolled out in 2019, and we've been using it for the past several years. The new 2022 baseline does take effect this year in 2025 and will feed into public reporting in next year, I believe by fall of next year. So going forward, CDC expects to update baselines again once about every 7 years on that cadence roughly. This cadence reflects how quickly infection prevention practices and technology have evolved. If you think about how our hospitals have changed since 2015, new EHR systems, more automated lab feeds, and even broader NHSN participation, it makes sense to update the map. I like to describe rebaselining as updating your GPS. The roads have changed, and we need a fresh set of directions. It's part of keeping benchmarks aligned with current national practice and prevention success. So the data that's now available for acute care hospitals, the new baseline applies to core healthcare-associated infection measures, our catheter-associated urinary tract infection, or CAUTI, our central line-associated bloodstream infection, or CLABSI, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus bacteremia, Clostridium difficile infection lab ID events. You'll find these reports under the HAI risk-adjusted reports under the 2022 baseline. You could see the little screenshot there when you log into NHSN. If you're an NHSN user for your facility or healthcare group, you'll see under the analysis report section, you can see those HAI risk adjusted measure reports, and then you just click the file tree and you'll find the 2022 baseline sets there. They do have the 2015 and original baseline reports still archived in there as well. But we are shifting to 2022 now. So they are using these updated risk adjustment models that better reflect today's hospital landscape. These reports should look the same as before. So if you're used to running these reports, the SIR reports specifically, it'll still highlight the p-value with 95% confidence interval. So these are statistically significant testing done on these measures. And they're making this transition as easy as possible. These reports should look the same as before. It's just updating that data and benchmarking for the most part. So TAP reports or targeted assessment for prevention reports should look the same as before as well. Those are not yet available. I haven't seen those yet, but again, NHSN is rolling these reports out in a phased approach, and they're about halfway there with updating all their analysis reporting to the 2022 baseline. I will mention that CMS has already aligned its quality programs, both the hospital acquired condition reduction program and the value-based purchasing program with this update. NHSN has been in contact with CMS for about a year now. They're expecting these changes. They're working hand in hand to update everything on their end as well and understand the potential changes that could come with rebaselining. So these new SIRs and other measures will begin feeding into public reporting on the CMS Care Compare website starting in fall of next year, fall of 2026. So if you participate in those programs or your facility does, the SIRs generated from the 2022 baseline will determine your public scores and reimbursement calculations moving forward. And again, just kind of in addition to acute care hospitals, other facility types like long-term acute care hospitals, inpatient rehabilitation facilities, and PPS cancer exempt hospitals, there are reports available now within NHSN. I did log in before this and confirm that CMS reports are available for these using the 2022 baseline for these specific healthcare associated infection groups. So for critical access hospitals, we have CLABSI, CAUTI, MRSA bacteremia, Clostridium difficile or CDI lab ID, and also surgical site infection data. LTACs or long-term acute care hospitals reporting CLABSI, CAUTI, and CDI. The inpatient rehab facilities reporting CAUTI and CDI, and PPS cancer exempt hospitals reporting surgical site infection, complex 30-day, and MRSA. So this broader inclusion makes the national data set far more representative under this rebaseline. In 2015, many smaller and rural facilities were underrepresented, which skewed benchmarks towards larger and more academic affiliated medical centers. Now, with a more diverse data pool, our expected infection counts better mirror the real US hospital population. At least that's the goal with this risk adjustment. CDC has also launched an NHSN rebaseline tracker where you can follow updates as new facility types and HAI models come online. Again, that's in a phased approach. When I checked earlier today, they were at 49%, and that's up from 9% a couple months ago. So they're definitely moving and making progress in this realm. And again, this is just a nice infographic I found that kind of builds off the last slide, looking at what's available by facility type. Please note that the grayed out boxes for LTACs and inpatient rehabilitation facilities, those CMS reports will not be created for those specific HAI types. And again, this is just CMS report availability. That's different from the risk adjusted metrics we were showing at the diagram before. These are further down when you log into NHSN and you're running analytic reports. These will be found under the CMS report file dropdown. And these models are definitely in there. I did check earlier as well. So why rebaseline? You may be asking, why are we rebaselining? So, as I kind of mentioned before, as a nation, our infection rates have dropped nationwide. Reporting has definitely expanded over the years, and definitions have evolved, right? Rebaselining is how CDC keeps the playing field level. It ensures when we compare ourselves to the national average, we're using a reference here that actually represents today's reality, not the landscape from a decade ago. It's also a positive signal. Rebaselining happens because the national infection burden has decreased, and it is simply the process of updating models NHSN uses to estimate predicted infections. In other words, we earn this recalibration through collective progress and ensures we're comparing ourselves to the most current and realistic national standards. With modern medicine, things change all the time. We're in the ICD-10 for diagnosis codes, right? As science evolves and our understanding of medicine evolves, so does statistical reporting and risk adjustment to better capture and reflect that modern landscape. So a few important updates were made for what changed from the 2015 baseline to this new baseline. So broader national data, more hospitals are reporting to NHSN, including more smaller and critical access hospitals. Enhanced risk adjustment, the new models do incorporate variables such as bed size now, ICU type, teaching status and medical school affiliation, and unit-specific factors, which were underrepresented in the 2015 baseline. Improved electronic surveillance means the data are more reliable. Definition updates, including things like CAUTI or the catheter-associated urinary tract infections, and C. diff lab ID criteria reflect current diagnostic practices as well. Together, these updates make the new baseline more precise, fair, and again, reflective of hospital realities in today's modern medicine. So now I want to take a minute and kind of go over the SIR, just give a brief overview of how it's calculated, kind of what's changing, and give some examples about how we can see differences with the 2022 baseline. So just a quick refresher, the SIR is calculated as your facility's observed infections divided by predicted infections. A value of 1 means your facility's infection count matches the national expectation. Less than 1 means better than, less than 1 means you have less than predicted, and greater than 1 means you have more infections than predicted. The key piece here is that the predicted number comes from the national baseline model. So when the baseline year changes from 2015 to 2022, the predicted number or denominator in this case also changes, even if your observed infections stay the same. It's not that infection rates have spiked, it's that the yardstick itself has changed. So the same thing is happening with the device utilization rate or standardized utilization ratio. Again, this is a standardized measure that is required for facility reporting to NHSN. It's one of the best metrics NHSN uses to track infections over time if you're and compare to that baseline to see how your facility stacks up against like the national average that they're recalibrating. So why are SIRs changing? So, your observed infections may stay the same, and that's likely true. They usually remain stable over time, right? Depending on your hospital size and your catchment area and other factors like that. So, predicted infections do drop due to national prevention success and lower device use. And this will lead to what appears to be a higher SIR when compared to 2015 benchmarks, even if your facility's performance didn't decline. So in bold here on the screen, I do have an example. So let's say your hospital had 6 CLABSI events last year. Under the 2015 baseline, NHSN might have predicted 10 events for your hospital's size and acuity. That gives you an SIR of 0.6, well below 1. So you have less infections than predicted under this scenario. Now, using the 2022 baseline, the model might predict only 4.5 events. Your SIR would now calculate as 1.33, even though your observed number didn't change. So when SIRs jump from 0.6 to 1.3, it's not a decline in performance. Rather, it's a recalibration of that benchmark. The SIR is everywhere. So pay attention to footnote changes when you run your reports, inclusion, exclusion criteria, etc. Just be mindful that some of those risk adjustments will make that SIR look elevated when you run them. And yeah, as mentioned, how this will affect hospitals and facilities in general, you'll likely notice your SIRs change. Your infection counts will remain stable or steady or the same, since that comparison doesn't really change. It's more the denominator and the predicted value. Smaller and community hospitals may see bigger shifts since the 2022 models incorporate more nuanced stratification. So focus on trends and not year-to-year comparisons. Expect to see SIRs appear closer to that 1 or null value, reflecting alignment with a new national average. It might look less exceptional, but it's actually a sign of stricter, more accurate benchmarks. We're moving the goalpost because we've been so successful in the last decade, right, with infection prevention and meeting those benchmarks. They had to adjust something, right? So I do want to mention that when you are analyzing SIRs from different baselines, since those 2015 reports will still be available, and we're kind of in that gray area and transition period from that 2015 to 2022 public reporting and rebaselining. So one of the most important takeaways from today that I'll stress is do not compare SIRs across different baselines. Don't plot them on the same graph. You can compare them side by side, but they're different. They're different risk adjusted models, different regression models are being used, different variables are being included and or excluded from that denominator predicted value. So technically, they're not statistically comparable. Statistical testing within, though, is still being done by NHSN to give you that p-value to know if your observed infections are statistically significantly higher or lower than that 1 value for these ratios. But again, I just caution you when you're looking at 2015 baseline data and 2022 baseline data, they are not statistically comparable to one another. So I would view them as separate metrics when you're looking at this data. Do not plot them on the same trend line and try not to conduct, and yeah, definitely don't do statistical testing between them. Each baseline represents its own model and context, and just label your visuals clearly and focus your trend analyses within a single baseline period. So now I want to kind of go into some pseudo data on what this SIR reset could look like in a specific scenario for random, just again, this is just an example before we get into real HAI data from Michigan hospitals. But this slide illustrates the standardized infection ratio over time, including a significant rebaselining event from 2015 to that 2022 baseline. So this is where that denominator comes into play, and that predicted count changes from the 2015 to the 2022 baseline. So when that national baseline shifts, that predicted infection rate changes, the SAR definitely resets in this case, or recalibration of the performance measure against a new standard. So it's crucial to understand this as a recalibration of the metric and not necessarily a reflection of immediate performance decline or improvement for that matter, as the underlying calculation reference has changed. SIR values before and after the rebaseline are measured against different national contexts. That's why the example facility here looks different under the new risk model, with recalibration shifting numbers. So even if your infection prevention work hasn't changed at all, it is definitely not a reflection of declining performance. As you can see, the left graph here is using the 2015 national baseline, and it's just plotting the SIR values against that null value of 1, which is that horizontal orange dotted line on the left, and then the lighter blue line on the right graph. Again, this is the post-baseline SIR 2022 on the right, and as you can see, these both use the same observed infection counts, but the ratio itself has changed because that risk calibration has changed the denominator, and predicted counts have likely decreased, and therefore your observed counts will shift that SIR upwards. So now I want to talk about some next steps for your facility. And as you talk with leadership teams and whatnot, how to communicate these changes. So as you talk with your leadership teams, focus on clarity and reassurance. Say things like the SIR now compares our hospital to 2022 national data. Everyone went through the same recalibration. Our counts haven't changed, the comparison did. Avoid saying things like our SIR went up. Instead, say our SIR recalibrated. Nuances in how you're presenting these changes can make a difference, especially when financials and reimbursements are needed for CMS reporting, right? When you're presenting to leadership, if you're the NHSN user for your facility, these changes and the nuances are definitely important to communicate to leadership. If you have dashboards or quality improvement tracking as well, just update those to note which baseline they use if you're still looking at 2015 or 2022. And you can include footnotes on those dashboards or static reports, depending on how you're tracking these measures for your facility. You could say things like beginning 2025, all SIRs are using the 2022 NHSN baseline. This can help educate non-clinical stakeholders as well and prevent potential misinterpretation because when the SIR does increase or change for that matter, it does look like your facility is doing worse when that is just not the case, right? So providing that context is definitely important in this instance. So some recommendations I would suggest are, review your data using the 2022 baseline. Begin looking at those reports, pulling them down from NHSN, get used to the familiarity of those, how they can impact your own metrics for your facility. And again, you can compare them to 2015 and the old ones if you want, but I would suggest just changing your reports with that 2022 baseline with the available reporting that is available within NHSN. Again, they are on track because that public reporting to CMS for some of their tools is set to launch next fall in 2026. So it's better to start getting used to using the new baseline now to see how your facility shifts and changes. NHSN has been in contact with CMS about these changes as well, and hand in hand, CMS will adjust accordingly. They know this is happening nationwide. They do know that SIRs will shift and change, so those benchmarks and reporting may change as well. But again, they're aware of this and will adjust accordingly from what I've read for sure. I'm more of an NHSN subject matter expert, not CMS per se, but that's my understanding of the situation. So again, review your infection counts and device utilization rates regularly, again, with a recalibration as well. They're launching this nationwide. So just pay close attention to your own infection rates and counts. Ensure surveillance definitions and mapping are up to date for your facility as well. You may need to work with NHSN. Their help desk is really helpful as well if you notice any changes, if you notice any discrepancies in your data over time, if something is just looking way off, definitely reach out to them. They're pretty quick to respond these days, considering everything going on. And they will look into it for you and give you an answer for sure. They are really good about that. Use NHSN tools for SIR trends, the data or the device utilization rate ratio and the standardized utilization ratio as well. You could do peer comparison as well if needed, and definitely utilize your contacts and resources at state health departments, your epidemiologists and your units to better understand these data changes as well, giving regional insights for those recalibrated goals. So with that being said, I do want to talk about some of the CMS program implications that the 2022 rebaseline will have. So these changes do not just stay inside NHSN reporting, right? They directly flow into CMS programs that affect both public reporting and reimbursement. For the hospital acquired condition or HAC reduction program, recalibrated SIRs for CLABSI, CAUTI, CDI, and surgical site infections will be applied starting in fiscal year 2026. That will be based on 2023 to 2024 data, so it is a little different, and that will begin showing publicly in fall of 2026. For the hospital value-based purchasing program, the infection prevention domain will eventually be recalibrated against the 2022 baseline. This can shift facility scores even when infection counts are stable. For the hospital care and care compare tool, the public will begin to see infection metrics recalculated with that new baseline again in fall of next year. Many hospitals nationwide will appear to have higher SIRs, even if their performance hasn't changed. And again, this is just a kind of infographic about these changes that are coming when they take effect for CMS programs and the timeline they will be occurring for each program. So you can see your programs in the left column here. You have your HAC reduction program. That baseline status is final, effective date fiscal year 2026, using data from 2023 to 2024 to move that forward. And then the NHSN HAI measures for those are CLABSI, CAUTI, CDI, and SSIs, I believe, for colon procedures and hysterectomy. Those will be updated to that 2022 baseline. The baseline status for the value-based purchasing program, that is still pending. Effective date, not till fiscal year 2029 for that. CMS is finalizing that shift to the 2022 baseline, starting with fiscal year 2029 program year. And then the hospital compare / care compare tool, again, effective date will be fall 2026, and that's the public display of hospital HAI data under the 2022 baseline, and that'll align with the first one, the HAC reduction program. And I will mention this bottom row here, the skilled nursing facility value-based purchasing. It's a different HAI measure than NHSN uses. It'll use a baseline fiscal year 2022 for that, performance for fiscal year 2024. That uses more of a claims-based HAI measure. It's more like claims-based attribution than risk-adjusted measure. So it's not NHSN chart abstracted. So just keep that in mind when looking at CMS reports within NHSN. So now I want to give real world examples of some Michigan hospital, acute care hospital data and what we've noticed with this recalibration using the 2022 baseline versus 2015 baseline. So this first graphic here is the device associated events. It is our CAUTI or our catheter associated UTIs. So we have 3 years worth of data here. This is broken out by year and quarter. So we began 2022. That's the other thing I want to mention when you're pulling these reports, the data. So if you want to look at data before 2022, you cannot use the 2022 baseline. You would have to use the 2015 baseline. So when you're running reports, data moving forward, your starting point should be 2022, either quarter one, half one, or if you're doing annually, just use 2022, right? So looking at this data, I've broken it out by our time period in the left column here for device-associated events, CAUTI specific. The next two columns, second and third column, look at the 2022 baseline. We have infection counts and the SIRs. And then the third and fourth columns are the same as the second, except they look at the 2015 baseline. As you can see, our infection counts remain the same, plus or minus a couple. That always happens when you rerun reports. Sometimes they get recalibrated to a different time frame, which is what I believe happened here for a couple time periods. But the biggest difference here is the SIR change, and that's what I want to note today. And it's a common theme, right? It's going to shift. It's going to be recalibrated. The top graph to the top right of your screen, that one is the 2022 baseline for CAUTI. I have two axes here to better understand this data. So our infection counts are listed on the left, and those are the blue bars you see. And then we have a secondary axis plotting the SIR as that orange line. The dashed blue line in both graphs is that value of 1, which is the national average or standard or null value, however you want to look at it from a statistical standpoint. And as you can see, even though those infection counts have remained stable and even the same over the same time period, the different baselines for CAUTI, you can see that the SIR has shifted upwards under 2022, closer to that 1 value. It was more protective below, and they have changed. You can notice the difference in the table as well. And then again, this is CLABSI. It's going to be rinse and repeat here. We're noticing the same thing. The SIR is hovering closer to that national average for Michigan acute care hospitals. Again, this is only acute care hospitals reporting in Michigan. I do also want to mention Michigan is a voluntary reporting state. So we do have participation from roughly 100 acute care hospitals, which is pretty good considering we are voluntary NHSN reporting jurisdiction. We do see strong participation from our acute care hospitals in this state, which is good. But that's where this data is from. And again, this includes varying bed size and teaching statuses as well. This is just overall, not broken out by region or anything like that. But again, for our CLABSI, HAI, device-associated events, same thing, infection counts remain stable over this 3-year period, and that SIR has shifted closer to that national average or that 1 value versus 2015 below. You can notice it was below 1 for a larger amount of time. And then for our MRSA bacteremia lab ID events, we are noticing similar as before. So again, infection counts remain stable over time. There's a slight shift in that SIR because of that recalibration. And again, sometimes it'll look above 1 and look like you have more than expected infection counts for this specific HAI type versus we had below expected counts compared to that national average for that 2015 baseline for MRSA. Again, this one is a bigger shift, and that's that CDI or Clostridium difficile infection lab ID events. So again, this is comparing over the same time period. You can see the infection counts remain stable and the same between the 2022 and 2015 baseline, but that SIR has more of a drastic shift. That's because the risk adjustment is likely going to affect your CDI lab ID events because of that diagnostic criteria that has changed. It's going to be more of a drastic shift. So this is going to be one of the biggest shifts you'll notice, and you can see this is real world data from Michigan acute care hospitals and kind of what's going on with that SIR. It's hovering way closer to one when we were way below expectations under the 2015 baseline. So again, that's just more infection prevention has done a good job over the last decade. They had to move the goalposts because we can always adapt to our situation and set realistic targets to achieve based on prior successes, right? And again, this is our colo SSIs for surgical site infections, colon procedures at least. Again, acute care hospitals across the state of Michigan. You can see the SIR is not as big of a shift, not as big of a change here. And that's likely, you're going to notice something similar with your facilities when you run these reports as well. And then same with our hysterectomy SSIs. You have your infection counts, usually low over time. So you may see bigger fluctuations, but again, that predicted value takes that into account, and you'll just see a shift again. So in summary, across Michigan, overall infection counts have remained stable over that 3-year period we looked at. SIRs appear higher. I know I'm saying that. We shouldn't be using that language. They've just been recalibrated, and they have shifted towards that national average more so under the 2022 rebaseline. Those HAI trends are remaining relatively stable and steady under the new baseline. The biggest recalibrations will be apparent again in smaller and community hospitals. But because of this rebaseline, they're trying to compare those hospitals to similar hospitals as well. So if you are from a smaller or a more rural facility with a smaller patient population or smaller bed size, let's say, you're going to be compared nationally to similar facilities, bed size, teaching status, etc. That's what the risk adjustment is attempting to do. So these smaller and rural community hospitals are not as underrepresented as the 2015 baseline. So again, just continue to track infection counts and device utilization locally. Don't get discouraged if the SIR appears higher under the 2022 baseline. It's just a shift, right? Okay, it looks like we are ending a little early today. I did kind of go a little fast, so I do apologize. I do have some resources here. And again, as Denise had mentioned, these slides will be posted after with these links. NHSN does have a good collection of resources where they have been prepping for this for over a year, right? They began this process last November, bunch of messaging went out, and then they've been working hard over the past year to update their risk models. And again, it's a phased approach. They've been communicating this, and now we're in the action stage where we need to start shifting all reporting to that 2022 baseline. So it'd be best to just log in, get used to it, see how they look, see how your facility is going to look. I don't know if your facility does internal quality improvement tracking or anything like that, but it's something similar. You could just begin to look at these resources if you need. There's FAQs, there's videos to help prepare you as well for this shift and change. But I will open the floor for any questions after today's presentation.
Oh, can you advance to your next slide? I think it has your contact information in case anyone.
Oh, yes, feel free to reach out to me as well.
Well, thank you so much for presenting on this topic. I know it is definitely one of interest for our members, and we appreciate how you have provided us ways to show the data and use some certain terms to help when we're talking to our leadership. So if you have a question and you're in the audience, please put it in the chat. We are happy to have Kyle answer any of your questions today.
Yeah, thank you, Denise. Yeah, and I know like infection preventionists and facilities do a lot of great work, right? And just saying running these reports, IPs have a lot on their plate, and I completely understand that. So I hope this presentation helps everybody understand that these changes are coming, your SIR is changing, and communicating these changes hopefully is easier now than before. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me via email if you have follow-up questions. I'll be here for you. I want to thank everyone for joining today and listening to me speak on this topic. I will turn it back over to Denise and the educational committee. I hope everyone has a good holiday season. It's upon us. It's already November. So I will stick around a little bit. If you think of something, throw it in the chat. But again, thank you, everyone.
So Kyle, it looks like there's a question that's going to be popping in, but I have a quick question as well. If there is a new infection preventionist that is on this webinar or is watching this webinar after with the recording, how can they get on your contact list for the NHSN user meetings that happen each quarter?
For the Michigan NHSN group users?
Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to email me or put your contact info in the chat. We can add you to that. We do have a web page as well with upcoming meetings. Our next meeting is, I believe, February 25th. We meet bi-monthly, so every other month on that cadence. But if you need to reach out to me, we can get you onto the listserv, and we'll get the agenda and information out as well. But yeah, definitely email is the best way to contact me on that, to add to the listserv and get you updated. Now, if you're a new IP and need to be added to our users group, definitely reach out to me as well. For the state of Michigan, we can add you as a user so you can look at these risk adjusted reports and just get into the NHSN web application and start that process as well. So I am the liaison there to help new users get for their facility, get onboarded, and be able to run these analysis reports for their facility as well. Does that answer? Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. I see another chat or another question in the chat, Kyle. Are there any plans for a one pager for IPs to be able to give to either their CQO, CMO, or CNO to summarize what you've presented today?
I haven't created a one pager, but I can look at some options that NHSN has. They have some FAQs and I believe some one pagers on their website about the 2022 rebaseline, but specifically for CMOs, CNOs, I didn't have anything specifically prepared for that. No.
Okay.
All right. Well, I don't see any additional questions. So on behalf of the APIC Great Lakes Education Committee and members, thank you so much for joining us today, Kyle. We really appreciate you presenting. And now I am going to move to our updates. Please watch the Great Lakes website and your emails your membership emails, because we will be having the 2025 Winter Social in December. I believe it is the December 12th is the date that they're looking at securing. So kind of mark that on your calendar, watch for the event information, and we hope to see you there. We are also going to start planning for our 2026 webinar series. So if you know of a particular presenter or a certain topic that you think would just, you'd really, really like to see us promote and put through on this webinar series, please reach out to us at the APIC Great Lakes email. Put on there that it's for a webinar series, and then they will send it over to the Education Committee. And again, I want to say thank you for joining us today. Now I'm going to stop the recording, and we will be moving into